Well, hello everybody, and this is the first edition. A little difficult for me to do, I guess, get this right from the start. I've said to many people before, I have a good head for radio, so if you'll bear with me. With 3 questions today that I am endeavouring to get through, I will just move myself over to those questions and let's get started, shall we? All right, the first question that I had today comes from David Willis and his team in Western Australia, where the market is a little bit tighter than it has been for a number of years, and it is apparent to me that more than anything else, price is the major issue on getting properties sold. So what David has asked me to cover off here today, he said price is a massive problem at the moment, Mark. Trying to get sellers to see that the guts has dropped out of the market, and it is slow and painful process. The average days on market now are peaking out at 120 days. Many simply don't sell, so agencies are hemorrhaging. Well, I would ask if anyone, well, first of all, thanks, mate. Jeff Luby's logged in and told me I've got a good head for radio. Anyone else got any comments there? If you could give me a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10 that the reception is good, I would just like to know. All right, so let's just cover this off with a couple of things, because many of these properties, as David is saying, simply aren't selling and they're hemorrhaging. The first thing that I would say to you is that you got to check your frequency of communication. Are you talking to these sellers every day? Without doubt, the most common complaint that I hear of real estate agents to this very day is the lack of communication and the poor frequency around that. Now, I often say at Sales Trainer on the List and Sell Tour, the first complaint that you want to hear from sellers is that you call them too much. Because most commonly I hear that I don't hear from them, or I don't hear from them enough. So what I would be saying to you is call them every day, and your goal around this should be to the point where they actually say, you don't have to call me every day. Once you've done this, you can be absolutely assured that communication and the frequency of it will not be a problem. The second thing that I say to them is, or the second goal, if you don't get that one, is to reach a point where the seller asks your opinion. Now, if you're calling them every day, sooner or later, they're going to say to you, Mark, what do you think we should do in this situation? And once you've done that, you can be assured that the communication is good. Now, this doesn't solve the problem on its own. The next thing that I would be checking is that you are, in imaginative format, taking the seller, almost imagining that they've got a fast forward button on their head and you're pressing it and taking them forward insofar as their motive goes. You see, most of them will kind of sit there hoping that things will work out, and quite often the person to blame around this hope is the real estate agent themselves. So my favourite question, I'll give you this very slowly, is just out of left field. You ought to ring those sellers where you're having difficulty around pricing, about getting them to meet the market. And I just simply say to them, I say, hi, it's me, how are you? Now, if they say, who's me? There's your first problem on frequency. And I just simply say to them, what are you going to do if this doesn't work out? So can I just ask a question? What are you going to do if we do not get a buyer and this doesn't work out? Now, most of them haven't really gone down that path because they truly believe that all properties will sell and the buyer will eventually materialise. Now, when you ask them this question, the response to it tells you a lot about where this particular listing is going. Now, if they bark, if they say, well, it has to work out, and they do that especially with a little bit of contempt or anger or frustration about not getting a result, you can be assured that the motive is very high and you are indeed on the way. So this is the question that I ask, because what I'm checking for is if there's a contingency plan. If they move to another answer and say, well, if it doesn't work out, we're planning on renting it out, or, worst case scenario, they say they were going to give it to another agent, that means that they're now believing that you aren't the person for the job. But if they then sort of come up with a contingency plan, for me, that's a bit of a concern, because it means that they are planning for it to fail. So what I then do is, if they say, for argument's sake, that they're going to rent it out, I call their bluff. So I'll say, look, I think we ought to get a property manager down there so that you can get an idea on what it is going to cost to rent out. Now, if they say, well, why would you want to do that right now? So look, I just don't think it's going to work out, not at this price. Now, if they then take you to task on the price that you gave them originally, say, look, we've tried the possibilities. We've done everything we can to explore those, and I just don't think it's going to work out now. We really have to come back to some sort of reality. The property's been on the market, and in another edition of this, I'll give you some more principles around that if anyone should ask. But this is a simplistic way to deal with this today. Just ring them and ask them that question. The second thing that I would do, assuming that you've got a property that's on the market, say at $560,000, it needs to come back around the $500,000 mark, or close to. You believe it's going to sell around that number. I would ring the owner and say, hi, it's me again. Look, would you mind if I think aloud? And they would typically say yes. I say, look, what would you do right now if we had a buyer at $480,000? Now, when you say the number, what you need to do is literally just shut up. Again, we're waiting for the response. If the response is one where they just blow up, that's actually a good sign. If they get really angered and frustrated and say, well, just take it off the market and blah, 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 I simply say to them, hey, I didn't say we had a buyer. I asked, what would you do if we had a buyer? But the beautiful thing is that the number has been transferred from here, the one that you're thinking, across to them. Now, some of you are asking yourself, well, hang on, if I want to bring it back to 500,000, why is he talking 480,000? Well, a major fundamental around negotiation is to ask for more than you really want. And that too is very, very important in getting that message across. The next thing that I would do is make sure that you are sending some sort of communication. If you're having weekly sales meetings and the entire team is saying to you that that property needs to come back to 500,000, I would simply get my manager or principal to construct a letter that says that there was a meeting that took place on the advice from active and productive salespeople. They had indicated that the property was ambitious in the marketplace and needed to come back in line with the rest of the property. Having this correspondence come from a third party, especially one of authority, weighs in very, very heavily with owners. So I would certainly be doing this. Now, if you do have any difficulty in constructing a letter around that, simply jot something down or put something on this particular post, and we'll be sure to get that out to you, a copy of what we've got around getting that message across. The other thing is that in all of these instances, when you're engaging the subject of price, my preference is to be in front of the client, especially, the more severe, the more difficulty they have in coming to terms with the fact that they've got to bring the price back, the more likely I am to ensure that they indeed have me in front of them, where they can see the eyes, they can see the sincerity, and they can see that I'm ready to tackle and confront the issue. And finally, my short form answer live on this question, David, is this. If you are having difficulty with sales, if you are having difficulty with prices and getting sales because of that, the simplistic answer from our perspective is always to get more listings. GML, as we say. So the more you have, the more properties you have in that marketplace, the greater the likelihood of your productivity not being affected by this phenomena, and indeed, the more likely your confidence is going to be up when you are confronting those owners that do have a problem with price. Hopefully that's enough for that one. And look, we can expand on it. If you ask other questions as we Ask Me Anything continues next week, I'll be more than happy to cover off some more points around that. The next question that we have is from Lachlan Shields. Lachlan is a young fella who found his way onto our Facebook site, and he for Facebook, the return of the salesperson, and I thought that he was pretty good. Pretty good. You know, pretty good in his front to jump on board. So here's what Lachlan had to say. So for a lot of you, this might be a question that seems entirely irrelevant, but I can assure you that from a young fella, it is relevant and it does have legs if we're going to give it an answer. He says, "Hi, Mark. How important do you think social media, which we're on right now, is to the modern day real estate agent, and how can they benefit from it?" Well, in a nutshell, the first thing that I'd like to say is this. It's called social media, not business media. Now, the clue's in the title. I find it fascinating that everybody's on Facebook trying to do business, yet it's considered bad etiquette to be soliciting business. I find this a weird phenomenon. But in fairness to all concerned with this phenomena, with the social media phenomena, there is a decorum that you need to follow if you want to have a degree of success with this. So I say quite simply this, given that people are frequenting the medium, Lachlan, it is absolutely vital that you get it right, but I believe most estate agents have gotten their methodology around social media wrong. Most agents go on there, they create some page that is either centric to their agency, or they create a page that is centric to, for argument's sake, a suburb or a local sporting group or whatever under that pretense. I see a lot of agents trying to create community groups around that sort of thing in their local area. And to me, they're kind of superfluous and they're a little bit of a nonsense. You see, the trick with social media, in my opinion, is not to attract people to you socially. After all, who in God's name would be saying to themselves on social media, I really have to friend myself a real estate agent? I mean, I've said this for years. If I was at home one day, it was around Christmas time, and I amazingly I'm down to my letterbox, and the only person that had sent me a Christmas card was a real estate agent, quite frankly, I'd probably top myself. I mean, after all, who wants to have, purely and simply, a real estate agent as a friend? So to me, the purpose of social media for us, insofar as we're concerned, is to try to figure out how to penetrate the social sphere of our clients and just quite simply be present. Now, you need to do this indirectly. So if you can be notifying the friends of your clients, their social sphere, of their movements insofar as real estate is concerned, and you're present around that, when those people come to sell, it's an almost indirect accolade or indirect referral. So to me, it becomes very, very important. Now, there needs to be a distinction here. I am a huge fan of advertising, paid advertisements on Facebook. Now, when you go to the paid advertisement, there really is no problem whatsoever with you being direct about the fact that you are looking to do business on the medium. You can still use those social connections that you may have made with your clientele and the good stuff that you've done, but again, run those ads inside margin ads, post boosts, things like this. I'm not sure on the whole idea of video insofar as real estate or property is concerned. One thing that I've been trying to get across to most salespeople is that we are not in the business, believe it or not, of selling houses or selling homes. When I ask large groups of real estate agents what it is that we do, nearly all of them say, quite simply, they sell themselves. Now, if you're selling me that you sell yourself, I call that prostitution. And, if this was a game of prostitution, have a look at this. I wouldn't have done so well. So what we actually do sell is solutions to problems. We get people moved. That's what they come to us for, a solution. They have a motive and they need us to help them satisfy that. So this is the thing, this is the social connection I like to make. I like to have people see that we're doing that, not so much that we're actually selling houses, because from their perspective, when they see this on social media, it just looks like we're raking in cash as opposed to us moving people or getting them getting them from point A to point B. So all of our newsletters, correspondence, market roundups, those sorts of things, they all have a correlation back to one or two simple questions. We let people know what's happening in the market because that's the question we're asked most often as real estate agents. How's the market? And then secondly, most people want to be abreast of their property value. So that's the other thing that we stay on, pretty much. I hope that helps you out. So advertising needs to be distinct from socializing. When you're engaging in social media posts, keep them social and keep the focus on trying to break in to your client's social sphere, not directly, not centric to you, centric to them, but you have a presence. Now, last but not least, my good mate Sebastian Viteri has asked about prospecting and fee defense. We're not going to have enough time on this live feed to cover off on prospecting, so I thought I'd move that one, if you wouldn't mind, Sebastian, to next week. But what I will do is make a start on the idea of defending fee or refraining from discounting fee, and that's why they call it negotiation. One of the first points I'll make about negotiating a fee, I don't know why it is, but when people use the word negotiation, they're always thinking about it in defense rather than attack. To me, with negotiation, it's about attacking. When I talk about negotiating a fee, I talk about how I can lift it, how I can bring that fee up to be the premium product. Now, I'm a firm believer in practice that any demonstration of your propensity to be on the attack around negotiating something up is a clear-cut demonstration as to why you should be justifiably earning your fee. Now, what I talk about with fee is I say that it works in three phases, which is difficult for me to explain. Next time I might do this with a whiteboard. But it works in three particular departments, and I'll just move through this slowly. The first thing that you have to get right is your psychological disposition, mindset, if you like. But I call this the psychological aspect of what we do around selling has to be in order. Once you are firmly convinced that your fee is just and fair, then the magic starts to take place. So we want to get the psych right. Now, the psych then feeds what I call the practical, which is the dialogue. Now, most of the time when people come to me around training around fee, they nearly always want to move straight to the dialogue. And whilst I can give you the words, and we will on this series as we progress each week, I'll give you some great dialogue that you can be using to ensure that you are negotiating a discount-free fee. But to take the dialogue on without actually having the psych in order is kind of useless. It's like me, say you're using a single bolt rifle that you can put one bullet in at a time and shoot, and then all of a sudden I give you a machine gun, an AK-47 or something like that. The gun, although it's way, way better than the single bolt action rifle, I shouldn't really be talking about this in light of all these gun laws, but although that's a better rifle, the machine gun's way more efficient than the other. If you don't know how to use it, if you don't have the psychological understand of all the aspects and how to actually put those into play, it's kind of useless. And it's the same with fee negotiation. We don't want to move to the dialogue without getting the psych in order. So I'll just start with that in this session and just deal with it with some very simplistic things that I call, that bring it down, to the principles that underpin fee, and I'd ask you to consider them. The first thing that we fail to get across is that we don't actually charge a fee. You see, in consignment selling, we earn a fee. The better the salesperson you are, the better the entitlement, but at the end of the day, the fee should have a direct correlation to the result. If the result that you get is one that exceeds the seller's expectations, why then can't the fee be justifiably linked to that result? So I say a better percentage is nearly always gleaned from the propensity to get a better fee. So that principle is earn the fee, don't charge it. And over the years, many times when I've been asked that and somebody said, what do you charge? I look at them almost in disbelief and say, I don't charge a fee. I earn it. And it's a point that really does hit home with a lot of our sellers. The second thing is it needs to be percentage based. Now, I've seen lots of arguments of late around setting what many people will call a fixed fee, that it should only be worth $7,000 or $10,000 or whatever the case might be. You know, in consignment selling, it's performance-based. So in literal terms, the simplest way that I can put this to you is that it has to be linked directly to a percentage. So the more you negotiate for the client, the more they receive. It's really that simple. The less you obtain for the client, the less you get. And as I say in the practical dialogue, which we'll share at a later date, I always say to an owner, a fee is negotiable throughout the life of the listing. If we get to the point of sale and you're not happy with the result, you always are in a position to renegotiate the fee. At this point in time, all we're setting is the incentive, and the incentive needs to be maximised if you are looking for an ideal result. So that principle, number 2, is that it has to be percentage based in consignment selling. The second thing is that, or third I should say, is that, and I know this sounds almost like a given, but for some reason this gets lost in translation, and I think it's because many agents over the years tried to use this as what I would call a unique selling proposition, which of course was nonsense. And that is that in consignment selling, if we don't sell a property, if there's no result, there is no charge. Now, I look at sellers over the years and I've said, look, we're the only profession that you can actually engage where we can do the job. We can market your property, we can bring buyers here, we can negotiate to a price that's in excess of what you've asked us to get, and you can, at that point, decide not to sell and we don't get paid. I said, what sort of a deal are you looking for? You've got a deal where you're in total control of either accepting or denying the result and negotiating the fee as we go, yet for some reason you have a problem with this. And this needs to be understood, and you need to hang on to it. It's aligned, this principle, with the ideal that the easier the sell for the salesperson, the higher the production. And this is critical, absolutely critical. You know, so the more sales that a salesperson makes, the higher the production capacity they have, and for them, you know, it's clearly aligned to the result. So if the result's not good, then the seller doesn't run with it. Last but not least, it needs to be a maximum incentive, as I was just alluding to. The fee at the point of listing should be at an optimum level that clearly motivates the individual to deliver a great result. The simplest way I can put this to you is the greatest management principle in the world is what gets rewarded. That which gets rewarded gets done. So the higher the incentive, the more likely the result is to be a favourable one, a favourable outcome for the seller that's engaged you. And last but not least, that the fee needs to be consistent and non-discriminative. One of my real bugbears around this fee issue is that agents negotiate differing fees for different clientele. And that is an issue that concerns me greatly. Why is it that the little old lady who's most cooperative, who, when you arrive there to do the listing presentation, gets out the date loaf, brings out the cup of tea, and is agreeable all the way, why is it that they get hit with the maximum percentage, yet the arsehole, for want of a better word, that's just got a discount mentality that grinds you into the ground for no apparent reason, to be as highly demanding, they get the good deal? I don't think there is an entitlement in that respect. Now, some of you might argue that the better the negotiator, the better the deal that they should be able to get. But I believe that you're the professional, and in your professional capacity, you should have a fee that's fair, and it should be non-discriminative in that everybody is on the same deal, at least at the listing presentation. Well, there it is. So if I can keep this regular, the whole idea is to keep it short and sweet. And I think we've got 24 minutes there, which I am more than happy to engage in 30 minutes of dialogue around asking the questions. So until next week, jump onto any one of our posts that you see out there and ask Mark anything about real estate sales.